Enthusiast or buyer, cars or bikes, all that you need from the auto world is right here on the Autocar India channel. Subscribe now. Beautiful sunny day, and that's great because I'm here in Europe to drive the facelifted version of the 5th generation of the C-Class. Now you'll really have to look hard to see the changes on the surface of this facelifted version, but the bigger ones are really underneath the skin, more importantly under that hood. So let's talk about those first. There are new engines, and of course there's a lot of upgraded tech as well, which we were going to experience over the next 2 days on a drive from Luxembourg to Germany. Obviously we chose to drive the ones that will find their way to India, and first up it had to be the brand new 300D. So this is a new engine to the C-Class. It's from the same family that we see in the E-Class now. It's a 2-litre that produces 245 horsepower, which is considerably more than the outgoing 250D, which it will replace. Power has been upped, but the torque remains the same at 500 Nm. Now, although it shares the same torque figures, this engine, with its additional power, feels much livelier, much sprightlier, and more responsive as well. In fact, earlier on when we were out on the Autobahn, we really pushed it hard and found that it was just effortless. And the good part about it is that the response comes from very low down the revs, so it's very easy to drive. The drive took us through all kinds of terrain. Derestricted autobahns, smaller winding country roads, and little towns with ridiculously low speed limits. Well, that gave us a good chance to check out the 300D, which felt easy and smooth in any kind of condition. Now, as far as refinement goes, settle into a cruise and it's hard to tell what kind of fuel you're driving on. However, push it really hard and it lets you know it's a diesel. Even then, it's not really intrusive, and overall, it's a refined experience. Now, the variant we were driving was the 4MATIC with the air suspension, and on the winding section of road, I found the steering a little lackluster. Now, the steering on this car feels a little mushy. It's quick to react and it points you where you want to go, but it just doesn't give you much feedback. However, in India, we will get the passive steel springs. There'll be no 4MATIC and no air suspension. Also, there will be a different calibration for the conditions, and that will make the steering response better. But getting back to driving here in Germany, I found a way around that. Flip it into sport mode and the steering does become more responsive. It definitely gives you more feedback. In fact, on the whole, sport mode feels much better because the gearbox also reacts much faster. In comfort mode, the gearbox takes a little while to react, especially when you flatten your foot to the floor. The 9-speed gearbox in the C-Class doesn't like to be pushed hard. Demand a sudden burst of power and a quick shift down, and there's a pause before it reacts. However, use it at path throttle and the responses are much better, much quicker. So on the whole, drive with a gentle foot in this car and you'll find this engine quite enjoyable. Gentle pressure on the accelerator actually makes the response faster and acceleration much quicker. And once you get used to that, the 300D makes driving a comfortable, refined and easy experience. Great weather and great roads, and I'm thankful for that because I've got another day of driving ahead of me today. Today we're going to focus on the other variants and the changes that are headed your way to India. The new C200 has a high specific output, ringing out 184 HP and 280 Nm from a 1.5-litre 4-cylinder turbo petrol motor. It's one of the new generation motors and it uses a twin-scroll turbo and a clever EQ boost system. This uses an integrated starter generator based on a separate 48V electrical system to store electrical energy from regenerative braking and then deploy it to fill torque gaps like when the turbo is spinning up. In practice, however, on the roads you do feel the symptoms of downsizing. Also, the engine is a bit noisier at low revs than the 2-litre engine that it replaces, and it doesn't have quite as much enthusiasm moving off the line. In the mid-range, however, it feels quite good, and combined with the 9-speed automatic, progress is easy. At full tilt, once again, you feel a little lack of power, especially when overtaking at high speeds. So overall, it's not quite as effortless or as refined as its larger displacement predecessor, but it gets the job done, and this EQ boost system works well. That EQ boost system will probably not make it to India, with cost being a factor and hybrids getting no advantages in our country. So using this downsized motor without EQ boost may not make much sense, and Merc might continue with the 2-litre engine it has currently. Well, one must always save the best for last, and it was soon time to hop into the C43 AMG. As before, it gets 4MATIC all-wheel drive, but now it has a 23 horsepower power bump too. We also chose to drive the sexier coupe body style, as this will make its way to India this time around. So if you're an enthusiast, this is the C to enjoy. Yep, everything feels so much better, so much more feedback from the car. It is up on power, but you really don't feel much of that out on the road. Still, on a winding section of road like this is the one to have fun with. It feels a bit heavier and more tied down than the standard cars, and all the settings on the adaptive dampers feel a touch firmer too. It's technically a 4-seater as well, but as with most two-door cars of this size, the space in the back is tight. Now let's talk about how these cars ride. The C43 definitely feels a little firm, but for most parts, the rest of the sedans had a very cushy ride. However, it's not a judgment I'd like to make at this point, considering that we will get entirely different suspension settings and most certainly different kinds of roads. The new C also gets level 2 or self-driving tech that made its debut in India on the facelifted S-Class. It worked really well in the C-Class on our test drive, but Mercedes says save for a few small sub-features, this won't be coming to India simply as it would upset the model hierarchy. The E-Class doesn't get it, so how could the C? Well, finally, it was time to come to a stop and take a look at the changes on the face of it. It's difficult to spot the changes, but if you look hard, you'll see that there is a different grille, different bumpers, and new wheels. There are some new configurations for the full LED headlamps. However, the more basic setup offers the 2 rows of LED units, one atop the other, and the more advanced multi-beam setup is using a large projector unit that is capable of shooting its light beam 650 meters down the road. Nice. There's also a new LED pattern in the tail lamps, and the AMG 43 models also get round tailpipes as a differentiator. The changes to the C-Class on the inside are very few, and it largely remains the same. You do get a larger multimedia display. Now the version here has really nice digital dials, and let's hope those make their way to the Indian version. You do also get a new steering wheel with the swipe command system over here. Very few changes, as you can see. Well, changes on the surface may be small, but the ones under the skin are bigger differentiators. However, to us, the only big change will probably be the new diesel engine. Mercedes haven't decided if they will leave the nomenclature as 250D or indeed call it the 300D. Another factor to consider is whether Mercedes will recalibrate the suspension for Indian conditions better than the current C-Class, as we find that one slightly on the stiffer side. The global version of the 220D was an estate, but in India, we will get the sedan. Also, the Cabrio will continue with the 300 petrol. So now the C-Class will have a variety of variants on offer and probably a car for everyone. It does also feel more modern overall. So come October, we will see how the new version of the C-Class is on Indian roads. And what I can say from this drive is that this new 2-litre diesel will surely make a good buy.